Mic and headphones, unbelievable. But you do with what you got. So 20 years in tech, and I've been doing this forever. So I totally understand
Comes back to
what
bite you
happened.
when you need it.
What it is.
Appreciate your patience over the last week. It's been a hectic one, a crazy one.
How you got it, brother. I mean, absolutely. I'm super happy that you were at least in a better place now. That's good, man.
Yeah. I'm in a great place, and it's almost Christmas. Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
It
When
is,
you
man. Merry
celebrate.
Christmas, happy holidays. It should be very entertaining.
Yeah, this is a good one. This is a really good one. You have quite the story. For people listening to this, great. You live right down the road, which is great. You're a fan of the podcast, which is like even better. And you reached out with a story, and I was listening. We were chatting, and I said, we got to put a halt to this and actually record this and make an episode out of this. So we're gonna have one here that is quite the journey, a lot of ups and downs that led you to where you are today as a life coach, author, a speaker. I completely understand why. I think when people have a life coach, I don't know, I don't think it's just me, but I think people want somebody that's relatable and someone who's been through it instead of just somebody who's like, I've had a great life. I'm going to be a life coach. You've been
Absolutely.
through it.
I have, and it's been a great journey. Hey, before we begin, I wanted to say congrats on all the success, man. I have been listening to the podcast.
Thank
I
you.
absolutely love what you do. I love the amount of positivity and help and information and knowledge that you just try to share to everybody, and that's on multiple different levels of health, wellness, mindset. Just wonderful guests to come on to share amazing information for everybody to use on a daily basis. So congrats on all
Thank
the
you.
success. I wish you much more of it. And I'm super happy to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know for people listening to this, probably like this guy comes out with like a random episode every week, but it's like, after I started this podcast, it was like, there's just so much that contributes to happiness, whether it's like health, fitness, adventure, traveling, learning about different cultures, food, how to overcome depression, mental health. It's like, wow, there's just so much out there, and you never know who's going to gravitate to what episode, or you never know of this entire episode what few words that people might pick up on that can change their life. So
Agreed.
here we are today, episode 145, I believe we're at, and
Amazing.
yeah, it's pretty great. It's very random, but it's intentional at the same time because you don't know. And I think about all the time, like I've been doing this about 3.5 years now, and it's been really cool how people have followed me along my own pursuit of happiness. Where 3 years ago I was single, and then I got engaged, I'm married, I have a child on the way, and I've been
Mm-hmm.
very honest and vulnerable about like issues with like relationships with my family. And I just released an episode today as far as like shame and guilt goes, and how that contributes to who you are today, and therapy and all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, it's been quite the journey, quite honest and quite vulnerable, and I know that's who you're going to be today. And I think
100%.
people are going to connect with this one. It is, like I said, it's a roller coaster.
It
What do you say
is.
we
And
start the
that's how life
ride?
should. Yeah, that's how life should be.
You want to start the ride? You
I
ready to
can,
do
my
this?
friend. Um,
Buckle in, buckle in. Here we
Buckle
go.
it, everybody. Hopefully we got some nuggets of knowledge that'll help you through life.
Yeah, let's kick it off, Greg. Because like I said, when we were chatting before, you started off and it just was like bam. I was like, whoa, like just so people understand, like you were in a place where you were considering not just being alive anymore.
Correct.
And that says a lot. So
Yep.
let's chat about how you got to that place and then ultimately how you got out of that place.
Sure. Story would begin about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. And I woke up in the morning and I was standing in the doorway to our bedroom. And I asked my then wife at that time, just one simple question that most people usually ask in any type of relationship. And I just simply asked, babe, are we okay? And it felt like an eternity for her to deliver her forward response of, I'm working on it. And in that moment, the fear and the panic and the anxiety all just washed over me like a wave. And I felt goosebumps all over my entire skin. Because at that point, I felt as though our lives were about to wishbone. And 30
And you were
minutes later,
married for how long?
about 3.5 years.
And like, how old were you at this time? Just so people can kind of have a
Sure. I
perspective.
was about 32 years old
Okay.
um, when we first got married. So that was early 30s
Hmm.
and progressed and kept going. We built the life that we knew with the information that we had the best way that we possibly could.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, the way that our lives progressed was neither of us ever had the correct foundation to fully understand what it means to communicate in a healthy manner, as well as how to communicate in any relationship. So our entire relationship was built on a foundation of cracks. And that really came to fruition when she finally mustered up the courage to say she was leaving me. And at that moment, that was the catalyst that shattered the illusion of the perfect life that I thought I was living.
When you say it was a surprise, were you completely surprised, or was it like, I'm shocked, but now that I look back, I could kind of see it happening?
No, unfortunately, it was an absolute, utter, out of left field shock.
Oof.
We never fought. We never had disagreements. We were perfectly in that version of ourselves. We were perfectly happy in the way that we were going about life, which was really avoiding all of the really hard,
Hmm.
vulnerable conversations that need to happen in order for both of us to grow in a direction that benefits both of us. At that point, we weren't having those conversations. And because I had always shied away from that in my life, I had
Hmm.
always been to the point that I loved being able to have people view me as a great guy or an individual who would help them or do what's best for them. But the reason I always did that was because I wanted people to like me. And I did the same thing in my marriage. I never
Hmm.
got into the hard conversations and the correct way to communicate with another person that you do truly love to be able to help cultivate a relationship that is not based off of validation from outside or validation from the relationship. It needs to be built from both of us creating a platform that we both can move forward with. And we never did that.
Hmm. I was
So
thinking when you said we never fought, I was like, well, there's a problem in itself.
there was,
How deep are you going here?
yeah.
Just an example of like some of the harder conversations. What were some of the harder conversations that you didn't have, just so people can learn from that?
Most of the time, the conversations that I avoided would be any conversation that would put us on any sort of tilt, whether that would be I didn't want a certain thing to happen or I would like something to go a different way. I never wanted to even have those types of conversations about
Hmm.
where we would eat or what we would eat because I didn't even want to put us in a position that it would feel maybe we should probably do something different. I always wanted to do what was best for her in the situation.
Hmm.
So even when it came down to having difficult discussions and like in terms of what we were going to purchase for cars, what we were going to purchase for finances and that types of things, because those types of conversations, people have very different points of view on how they value money, what they choose to spend their money on, and why.
Hmm.
I never even had those conversations. The conversations that I would even avoid would be, you know, cleaning the dishes. If somebody didn't do them, I would always step up and do it
Hmm.
because I didn't want to say, hey, I've done a whole lot this week. Is it possible just to have some help in these small situations so that I can create a balanced situation in this? We were so completely unbalanced in the way that I approached it
You must have been
that
exhausted. That sounds like
it was
absolutely exhausting life to lead.
it was exhausting. And every step of the way, I never thought about the benefits that it would be for me or to put myself in a position that was healthy. I consistently put the relationship and the marriage and her in a position for her.
Hmm.
So every day I got up, I never thought about anything that was regarding the well-being of me or in my own mental health. And because that deteriorated so quickly, that's why it became such a shock for me
Hmm.
that I needed to have everything I believed in shattered.
If you had these conversations earlier with her, do you think you would have still married her, or was she just the wrong person for you and you found out after you tied the knot?
100%. I do not think that we were married. We would not have been married.
Hmm.
And I say it with the most grace and acceptance that I possibly can. She made the right decision.
Hmm.
And the earlier you can come to that decision-making process of saying, I always want someone to be with me because I bring out the best in them and I put them in a situation that creates a healthy environment for both of us.
Hmm.
I never did that. So I would never want her to stay with me. And I wasn't ever mentally healthy enough to even have those conversations. So to put myself in that retrospective aspect, I think is impossible because of how I view life now would not be available to me if I didn't have that catastrophic event of having everything I stand for, lived for, and thought I was shattered in order for me to pick up the pieces that I felt as though would help me move forward. And without it, would be it.
You've said shattered a few times, and I feel like anybody who gets that news, probably how they would feel. And I think we all know the divorce rate is what, like 50-50 basically. So whoever's listening to this, probably you have a half a, there's a possibility half the people listening have gone through this or will go through this, which is freaking scary to think about. So you said shattered, and at what point did it get like suicidal? Was this the reason you became suicidal? Was there other things tacked onto this?
This absolutely was the first domino to fall in that category. So immediately after, I then drove directly over to my parents and my family for support. And I remember still watching her drive out the driveway and drive down the road on a cold December 28th night. And
just after Christmas, dude, we're coming up on the anniversary of this year. That's tough. Oof.
It was coming up. And I immediately drove over to my parents, and that's when I had my first panic attack. And I didn't know what was happening as I was driving. And I was on the phone with one of my family members. And as I was driving, I became uncontrollable in the way I was shaking, in the way I was feeling, in wanting to get sick. And the amount of fear that I felt at that point rushing over me, I knew I needed to pull over. And I pulled over in a gas station parking lot just for a few minutes for me to take a few breaths to gain my composure before I could even continue driving over to my parents' house. When I finally got to my parents' house, that's when I completely broke down and down on hands and knees, forehead on the floor, just releasing every bit of who I thought I was, getting rid of all of that emotion, to being able to finally figure out that I needed to start over. And before I could start over, I had to run through the process of what got me to this position.
Well, speaking of process, you're in a grieving process at this point. Whether it's like you just lost somebody, you lost part of yourself. As I'm taking notes here, it's like you also lost an identity. I could tell.
I did.
Did you put your identity in someone else?
I did. 100%. I put the basis of who I was in the hands of another individual. And because of me choosing to give someone else the power to define who I was in life, the shattering of that identity was what made me question even wanting to get up every day of my life. And that's dangerous. I knew in the place that I was, I knew I needed to shift. Not being able to get up every day and even getting dressed for work was extremely difficult. Figuring out how to put my 2 feet on the floor out of bed was the first step in creating a win for me.
What year was this? Because I'm thinking, is this before COVID or after COVID?
Oh, well before COVID.
Okay, because I'm thinking like what going to work looks like. Is it going to driving, or is it walking down the hallway in your sweatpants? Because that's a little more doable when you're depressed. But when you are going through this, you got to interact with coworkers, you got to dress up, look good, feel good, put on a show.
I did.
That's very, very difficult.
It is. And one of the most interesting sides of that aspect was we both worked at the same location.
Oh, good God. Are you serious?
So we also had to figure that out. She did resign. She ended up moving on to go to a different position almost immediately. And which was great because it was healthy for her, healthy for me. And it helped give us the space that was needed in order for us to gain more clarity on what next steps were without having to interact at a work environment. And at that point, I was, the director of IT for a law firm. And so I basically had to deal with every aspect of IT, which was every single user in the law firm. So there would have been interactions on a pretty consistent basis. So,
wow. Okay. So your life got shattered, turned upside down. You're probably slightly going through depression at this point,
yes,
anxiety. Um,
all
you
of
gotta
it.
you gotta compartmentalize like crazy at this point.
I did.
So how long after was it like did it get to like rock bottom? Was it an immediate or was that just a gradual tumble down?
That was probably about 3 to 4 weeks
Yeah.
after my initial news because I needed to get through the process of I was crying for no reason. I would get up and just start crying and I didn't know why. I didn't understand what emotion was even forcing me to the position to cry. So I had to start even there. And once I got to that process of knowing how that I needed to move forward in the best way I could, that's when the bottom fell out. And I didn't have any idea. Even the process that I was trying to take wasn't working. And that was another failure on top of what I viewed as a failed marriage and a failed life.
Hmm.
When I piled them all together, it became a weight that was unbearable. And it's a struggle when you get up every single day wondering if today is going to be the day that you don't carry on anymore.
So you really had those thoughts, huh? Like today
Very
just
much so.
might be it. Like I don't want to do this no more.
Very much so. Yes. And that process to even begin from switching that thought process of understanding how low you really are, you have to begin to build value in your life.
Hmm.
And that value became my next steps. And I needed to do it one single step at a time. And I truly mean that by the definition of one step. Understanding that getting out of bed and moving one step toward my closet or one step toward the bathroom was a win for me. That was a better solution than not being around and not being here for the people that I love and have helped me and support me through life. The selfish act of not being here for them became part of my beacon of moving forward.
This is tough, man. Like I appreciate you being honest, and I feel like people listening to this are probably like been there, or I know someone who's been there. So I
Mhm.
appreciate you lifting the veil behind these dark days because I think people are going to gravitate towards this. We're getting the real
Mhm.
honest and raw truth.
Yeah.
So for how many days and or weeks would you just say like you just really wanted to get out of bed? Like how long did this last? And when did you actually start to see a little shift or the mindset change?
Mhm. At least it was at least 6 months that
Wow. Okay.
I was feeling that type of weight on my shoulders. And the amount of time that you carry something with you, the heavier it gets. So I needed to put it down. And I knew I needed to put it down because it was affecting everything I was doing in life. It was affecting my career. It was affecting my family relationships. It was affecting my friendships. Everything I was doing, I finally came to the realization that it was that weight that I was carrying that I needed to put down. And as I did that, I then began to move forward and figure out that the small step for me was to continually walk. That's where I started. So when I began to think about things that in my life and how I got to that point, what got me there? the decisions I've made and the weight that I was feeling, I was stuck and I was hitting walls, I was hitting ceilings, and I couldn't go anywhere. So my trigger was I needed to move myself, my physical body forward, and I would walk. I would walk to the point that my calves became rock solid and cramped.
How many miles a day were you walking? Like how many steps or miles?
I was doing, I mean, 5, 6 miles of just walking around in my house.
Wow.
I wouldn't sit down because I recognized that the stillness that I was feeling was the stagnation of who I was. And I needed to continue to move forward. And the only way to do that was by moving physically my body. And starting with that one step started the ball rolling of being able to understand that if I'm moving, my thoughts can move forward with me. I'm no longer going to be stuck in the position that I was and in the past. So if I move forward with everything that I do, I can work like this. So as I did that, I then started to gain a lot more clarity on the way that I operated in life. And when you begin to evaluate who you are and what you have done, you then see the choices that you've made and what you get to choose moving forward. I just chose everything else that I thought everyone would love, hear, and want to be a part of. I couldn't do that anymore because the self-serving aspect for everyone else was extremely detrimental and got me into the position of wondering if today was going to be the day that I didn't have a chance to even walk or move forward.
Looking back, were you actually happy in those moments? Did you think you were actually happy, but you weren't happy? And then were you just doing things like getting married and doing what married couples do because it was quote unquote like the thing you should do by the time you're 29 or 30 or 31? Is just like a textbook of life that people try to follow and it just doesn't exist?
Every bit of it. I walked every single step and rung of that ladder. I chose my career not because I loved it. I chose the cars, I chose the clothes, I chose the watches, I chose everything. Everything that I did, I chose not because I loved it, because I wanted the validation and that shiny object that made everyone think that I was living the life that you should live. And I felt as though I had to keep up with the Joneses. I had to get married. All of my friends were getting married. They all started having children. I was behind. I felt the pressure of being behind from everybody else, and I needed to catch up. And I did every one of those single steps that most people do today. And then when they fail, it hurts and stings to a degree that is sometimes incomprehensible.
This is so relatable. This is so relatable. And like in a few ways, I feel like we took the same path, but then there was a fork in the road at some point because I went my entire 30s thinking I should have been married by now. I should have kids by now. All my friends are married, having kids. They're all doing couples things. I don't get to see them that often anymore. I was getting frustrated. Like, what do I have to do? I know I have a lot to offer. What is going on here?
Agreed.
But I never took the step of like proposing. I'd be in a relationship and I would know this isn't for me. And then on to the next relationship after a few years, this isn't for me. So you took the step and I was just like, I don't think I can do it. But then I spent my whole 30s thinking like, what the hell is wrong with me? I should be married by now. And so I tried to follow the textbook at some point, living life by comparison to other people and your friends and stuff like that. It leads to a really bad place. I was frustrated for like no freaking reason. I'd be going into dates like thinking I should be married by now. I shouldn't be on a date right now and stuff. And there's
the same thing, my friend.
Millions of people listen to this are probably like, yep, same thing. Because they think people are going to think something's wrong with them if they're not married by 35 or 36. And just for those people listening, we'll get back to stories. Just for those people listening, I got married when I was 40 and I'm happy. And, you know what I mean? Like I figured out who the hell I was and what I was looking for because I waited so damn long. And and there are unfortunately a ton of people that are or were in your shoes of just trying to follow this textbook. It's like you got married when you were like 30. There's so
Yes.
many people getting married like right out of college, which blows my mind. I mean, hey, if they're gonna, that's up for that. I'm not judging them, but it's
Yeah.
like, man, from when I was 22 to 30, time I'm 40, it's like what I want, what's important to me is just completely different.
Totally different. And how you view the world and the lens and how you see it is shifted so dramatically by
Yeah.
the time that you are 20, 30, and 40. It's
I
it's
feel you, man.
eye-opening for sure.
I feel you. Yeah, I honestly think that's why like the divorce rate is so high, is because I think people realize after a few years, like, this, I didn't get married for happiness. I didn't choose this because of happiness. I just thought I was dating this person for a couple of years and I should do this because everyone else was doing it. And that's,
Yep.
it's a dangerous place to be. That's a really, because then you're going to be like, well, I've already wasted a few years in this relationship. Might as well commit and go for it now. And I
Yeah.
think that's why it's so important for people to hear your story. Like you did that, you went through some terrible times and you still bounce back. So if there are people in a relationship and you feel like you're too far down, you're not.
You are not. You
You
never will be.
were you were far, far down and you still bounced back. I'm sure you wish you did things different. So that's kind of why you're probably a life coach right now.
Honestly, if I can answer that in the most vulnerable way that I can, I do not wish any of it differently.
Wow.
In the moment that I sit here now talking to you and everyone who's listening, I don't wish anything to be different because I needed, for my personal experience in life, if that event didn't happen to me, I would continually lived my life based off of everyone else's prediction of what I should be in life. If I never had someone shine the light on every dark aspect of me, I wouldn't be in a position to help people the way that I do now. So I'm grateful for it.
Can you imagine living that way till you're like 60, 70, 80, and
No,
you would be on
absolutely
your
not.
deathbed like with the biggest regret of all time. Like what a wasted life. I lived it for other people, not myself.
And that's the thing. If people have the ability to recognize what they want to be, not who other people want them to be, that's one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself, not for finding a relationship or being with someone or giving someone else happiness. It's your decision.
I got a
You
question
have
for
to do
you.
it.
I got a question because I think people, and sometimes I do, and you probably do too. I think people probably struggle with, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be a little selfish to find my happiness and chase my happiness and do what makes me happy, but also being in a relationship where you have to compromise and sacrifice the other partner. Like,
Mhm.
can you dive in on that a little bit? Like, when do you know, perhaps, like when I'm like suffering and I'm just not happy compared to when you got to suck it up for just a little bit to, do what's right for your partner, do right
Oh
by
God,
them.
yeah. Yeah, it happens to pretty much every couple at some point in time. And one of the easiest ways that I have been able to deal with this is I ask myself a simple question, which is, are you doing the right thing?
Hmm.
And if you can ask yourself that question in every scenario that you do, then it makes life a lot easier.
Hmm.
Not by the situation for what is right for you, by what is called for by what you are currently sitting in. And when you can evaluate and remove yourself from the outcome, and the outcome still benefits either your partner or those around you without being detrimental to you, that's the right decision to make.
Hmm.
If you choose that to do the right thing, but it's only for you, and you are letting other people down, or you are not living up to the expectations that you should be, that's when you can become exhausted in the way that you make decisions.
Sounds exhausting. It's funny that I'm going to add that to my arsenal. I think a question that I ask myself all the time is, will I regret not doing this? And or you could also put it into like, will I regret doing this? But most of the time it's, will I regret not doing this, not taking advantage of the scenario, not introducing myself to so and so, not asking this girl for a date or asking
Sure.
for a number or something like that. If the answer is yes, you got to stop. You got to stop and just kind of like think about that and stop saying yes and be proud of the self and the decisions you're making and the changes that you're making and
All the
um,
time.
all the
And
time.
I agree wholeheartedly with every bit of that, because every one of those decisions that you make, you don't know if it's right or wrong.
Mm.
You
And you don't
don't.
know what you're gonna miss either. I remember I got tired of like I said, I got tired of being single, right? And at some point I said, I gotta make a change at some point. I just start saying yes. I just start saying yes to things.
Yes.
And there was nights it would be like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm like tired. I'm like, I just want to go to bed. And like a friend would out of nowhere, hey, I'm out downtown. You want to come downtown tonight? My immediate thought is no, but it's like, you know what? Fuck it. Just say yes.
You know
And
what? Just do it.
you never know. You can meet your wife in like because you got dressed and just took the chance and said yes. You don't know, or you can meet a business partner, or you can get a new job because of that, or something like that. You just when you just say yes to opportunities when people ask you, you don't know what's going to come of it. And at the same time, more people are going to ask you to do stuff because you keep showing up. If you keep saying
Yep.
no, people are going to leave you behind and say, this guy doesn't want to do anything. So
Yeah. And the saying no aspect, it has to be just reshaped just to protect yourself from things that you don't align with anymore.
yeah, that's very true.
And that's okay to say no,
Yeah.
but say yes to as much as you possibly can, as long as it doesn't compromise your core values and who you want to be in life.
That's a great
Then
point.
say yes as many times as you can, because your comfort zone will never expand.
Right. That's a good point, because you were basically saying that you were saying yes to everything, and
yes,
that was really compromising who you were. Yeah,
very
that's a
much
great point.
so.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how I was able to shift into understanding true definition of what boundaries really mean. I didn't know what they were before,
Ooh.
because I continually said yes to everything for everyone else. And I never said no to protect my own core values of who I was and wanted to be.
Oof. It's funny you say boundaries. That was a big topic on my last episode. We can touch on that in a moment, but I
Yeah.
want to continue along your journey here, because I think this is, like I said, what people are going to relate to. So you started to pick yourself up. I remember you saying you had like a weight that you like decided to put down. What does that mean? And how did you decide to put that down? Because I feel that there are people that are afraid to put it down because that means they're closing that chapter. And that's the only chapter that they're like still hanging on to hope. It's the only chapter they're comfortable with. And they, kind of hope it works out and maybe we can go back in time.
Yes.
So if
Very
you
much.
can explain what that meant, you finally put it down and what that did for you.
Yeah. The ability to set things down was very foreign to me, because I picked up everyone else's weight.
Mm.
So I carried around way more than I needed to. So not only did I had to put down the weight of me wondering if I was going to carry on in life, I also had to put down the weight that I was carrying for everyone else, living up to expectations and making sure I came through for everyone else. The ability to set that down really came from a reflection of where I was. And if I couldn't move forward in life, I had to put all of it down, because everything that I had done in life had led me to that point. So all of the weight that I was carrying was part of the reason I was there. So if I didn't put it all down, I wasn't going to make any progress. That's when I started to say no to protect what I wanted to build in myself moving forward.
How hard was that to start saying no? Was it dead? Did that take practice?
It was extremely awkward and very foreign to the way that I operated.
Did you get weird responses, or people look at you weird, or did people respect it?
In the beginning, people felt as though that I was changing drastically, because I would say, not in a terrible means, I would just say, no, that's just not right for me right now. I appreciate the offer, but no, I'm good. I'm going to stay in for this one, or I'm going to sit that one out, or honestly, I'm not the right one for you right now. If I could help you, I would, but I'm not in a place to help you. And once people started to recognize the honesty of my answers, I started to get the space that I needed from people to allow me to grow. And I just kept saying yes to everyone else, so I never created space for myself. So as I began doing that entire process, I did get pushback from certain individuals, and I had to get to the uncomfortable nature of saying, I'm going to take my stance on this. I'm not going to do it.
Setting boundaries.
Setting boundaries. And how I did that was one conversation at a time. And I mean that wholeheartedly. It was never I need to do this for 6 months. I need to do this for a year. I need to say no for a year in order to get me to where I need to be. I literally began with conversations that I was having with people. I felt where I needed to be, and I said yes if it worked and no if it didn't. So there wasn't an ultimate goal of months. It was a singular conversation and a singular step at a time.
What other steps did you take along your road of recovery? Was there therapy involved? Was there self-help? Was there books? Was there conversations with people? If you can talk about that.
All of the above. And I leaned on a lot of people. And one of my values, or what I believe now, is in times of crisis or catastrophe or hitting rock bottom, like I did, you need to shrink your circle, not alienate everything around you. Shrink your circle to the people that you trust, love, and respect the most. And then they will start to help you build the process of what you need moving forward. That's different for everybody. But I began by not taking advice from friends that I haven't spoken to in 2 years, 3 years. I began with the people who helped me, like family and very, very, very close friends, to help shift on how I saw things. And I would have very honest conversations with them, to the point where I would continue to move forward. I would call someone on the phone and say, hey, listen, do you have time for me to talk right now? You don't have to say anything. I just need to talk out loud to you. And as I would do that, I would begin to hear things differently in my own mind. Because if you never give that voice inside your head the ownership and responsibility of what you're doing, you can shape that narrative any way you want it to. But if I say it out loud to someone, which is what I was doing, I then gave ownership and responsibility to what I was saying. And that other person allowed me to go, that might not be the way that the truth really sits. You might want to see it in this light. Or I understand that's what you're saying, but that's not the truth of the situation. So it gave other people to give me the opportunity to challenge what I was thinking. And I knew that needed to happen. And the more I had those conversations, I would hear totally different aspects that I thought was happening inside my head. People would say, that's not the true reality of the situation. Here's how we see it. Does any of this help you? That would shift, each conversation would shift my mindset to much more of a, yeah, that voice is very detrimental to me right now. I need to get this out of my head, and I need people that I love and support me to help me bounce it out with fact.
Well, you also need to be in the mindset to be able to receive that. Did that take you a while to be in that mindset to say, yeah, maybe they're right, instead of like, F you, you're wrong, I'm going to talk to someone else?
And honestly, I can tell you that one of the simple shifts for me, and this is just coming from a technological background for me, I've spent 20 years in tech. The reason something happened, you can't just put a Band-Aid over a technical issue. It will continue to resurface. I switched the way I operated in my professional career and shined a light inside me to figuring out, okay, well, if I've done these steps, they've gotten me to this place, they are broken. What new steps do I need to take in order to get me to a new place? That probably took me close to a year to get switching that process of shining it internally to understanding that everything I've done so far has led me to a place of despair. How do I shift it? Well, I operate like this in tech. If it's a problem, I need to talk to someone and say, what were you doing first? Is there something you wanted to accomplish? What was the end goal that you needed to do? And that's how it would help solve a problem. I needed to do that with myself. I needed to figure out what my goal was, what my happiness was, the steps I wanted to take to get that done. But I couldn't do it alone. And I knew I needed to help. from everyone around me. And without it, I wouldn't have been able to gain the facts and lens that I have now.
So when you were taking steps forward, I imagine you were probably occasionally taking steps backwards through this whole
Very much
process.
so.
I mean, you're human, right? So how'd you get through those days? Because I'm sure there was, like you said, a year, right? After,
Yeah.
and like, there's probably times you're like, this is taking too freaking long. I don't want to keep doing this. I'm so tired of waiting for the damn rainbow to show up in my days. Like,
Yeah.
what were your steps throughout, like the backwards steps, the terrible days that you would have?
The terrible days that I had, I ended up making sure that I would check in with at least my best friend, I've been best friends with him since kindergarten. I would check in with him just so that I could hear someone's voice or perspective that I needed to hear to get out of my own way. That wouldn't be long conversations. That wouldn't be, an immense, get together. It would simply be, hey, what's up, man? How's your day going? And have him say, my day is going great. He would keep me updated with, kids and stuff like that about what's happening in his life. That just allowed me to see that there's more than just me. I needed to have a different perspective outside of just concentrating on how I felt, why I felt, either the progress I was making or wasn't making. And if you continue to steep in that, you lose perspective of what was happening around you. So I tried to have other people give me perspective of what was happening in their lives to help me get out of what I was doing. And those were my days that on my 2 steps back that I was taking, I would break down uncontrollably. And I knew during those days that I just needed to hear something different than what I was doing. And it was those small, tiny steps of going golfing with someone. I love golf. I've played golf most of my entire life. I've played basketball most of my life, a bunch of different sports. And I would just go shoot just to create a therapeutic value of doing something different. So simply shifting what I was doing on the days that I was taking backward steps helped me get out of the rut.
How did you get to the basketball court or to the golf course? Where there's people that are like, I love golf. I just can't get up. I cannot do this. I'm just so depressed. What do you tell those people to get out the door into the place that they love?
Sure. The thing that drove me was the feeling that I felt in those moments. I did not want to continue to feel that way. So if I stayed still and stagnant, I would continually be in the same situation that I didn't want to be in. If I didn't change, if I didn't go find something that I love, if I didn't go find something that I wanted to do or shift the way that I was doing things, I would have never gotten out of the position that I'm in. And it doesn't need to be big, huge things. If you love drawing, go draw. If you like listening to music, listen to different types of music. Don't listen to the same thing. Just change a small habit, a small thing, a small step in a direction that serves you. I wasn't doing any of that. And the longer you stay in the positions of sadness and grief and remorse, they will never change unless you take the steps to do things you love and are healthy for you. And I had to do it one by one.
I'm curious, did you tell friends and or family that you were suicidal? Did they offer you support if you told them, or did you kind of keep that to yourself?
No, I kept that to myself for sure. I didn't want anyone to see that as a weakness for me. And I tried to keep up the facade that I was good. Oh, it's just a little bit of trouble right now, but I'm going to get through it. I'm going to be good. I'm going to be okay. And I would continually say, no, I'm good today. And today's an okay day. Sure, I got a little bit of step back, but I'll get there. I'm moving. I never really told anyone that I was that far gone, except for my best friend, who was the one that would help me continually change how I would think.
For people that are literally feeling that right now and that haven't told anybody, what advice would you give them?
No matter how scared you are or how weak you may think it is to admit it, the strongest thing you can do in life is ask for help. And I had to do it because I guarantee you that for anyone listening that's ever been in that position or is in that position, there are people that love you. There are people that will help you. There are people that will support you. There are strangers that will help you. But you have a story to tell, and you are meaningful in this life. Without you, life changes for everyone around you. So if you are in a place that you can't figure out a way out, asking for help is the strongest thing you can do, not the weakest thing. One of the weakest positions you can put yourself is continually thinking you aren't worth getting up every day. And the more weakness you apply to that same position, the heavier it gets.
Out of curiosity, when you made the decision, I have a life worth living, I'm going to keep pushing through this, how far were you willing to go to find happiness? And I ask that because I've done so many episodes on different types of therapy. I just did one of ketamine therapy. We have psychedelics. So people will do that.
MDMA, psilocybin, all that stuff. Great.
Yeah. I've done an episode a couple years back on hypnotherapy, stuff like that. I'm just curious to know, how many different avenues were you actually contemplating taking to find some way out of where you were?
I tried, I did not try any, psychedelics. I really wasn't even a therapist speaking to people. And it may sound cliche, but it was turning inward for me. I needed to go evaluate every step that I ever took. And I went all the way back to my earliest days of kindergarten.
Wow.
And understanding where my sense of self-worth even began to the earliest memories that I could possibly drum up. And being able to go all the way back and start to feel as though why I chased the idea of being accepted by a female really ended up boiling down to my earliest memory I could when I was in kindergarten, and my, obviously, air quotes, girlfriend back then sat down and chose someone else. And every single day at kindergarten, the quietest kid who packed up the cleanest got to leave first. That was the only day that I left first out of the classroom. So I went all the way back to be able to understand that my earliest memories of being rejected, I held on to all the way through my life. And I needed to get to that kind of a place. And I steeped and evaluated every decision that I could possibly remember to get me to the point of why I was who I was.
Rejection's hard.
It is.
And I feel like we touched on this not too long ago about people being afraid to ask for a phone number or ask for a date because people are just afraid of rejection. What do you tell people now that are just afraid of rejection?
A lot of rejection is how you view trust, in my opinion. And if you're going to get rejected by someone, that means that you think that that person isn't going to act or be the person you want them to be. So if you are thinking that you're going to get rejected, the only way that that can happen is a 50-50 outcome. They either reject you because they didn't operate in the way that you thought they would, or they do operate and they do accept you. Works the same way with trust. Those aspects are a 50-50 outcome. If you're able to just sit in your own self and say, if I approach this person, here's the information that I have. I like you. I think you are a person I'd like to be with. I'd like to see if we would like to go on a date. Just simply asking that is already progress. There is no rejection in that. You're dealing with the best information that you have in that moment. That's the only thing we all can do. You can't predict the future, and you have to let go of the past. So if you work in the now, this is the information you have. If you get rejected, it's not rejection. It's a path forward for you. You either are moving forward with them and you have an answer that they do want to move forward with you, or you're moving forward without them and you have an answer that you're not moving forward with them. So there is no rejection.
It's like failure. It's not really failure. It's just pointing you in a different direction.
Yeah. And failures, I speak a lot about that. And the trust aspect and rejection. And failure doesn't actually truly exist unless every single person sits down and defines what success means to them. I went through life based off of thinking I would be a success. I never defined what I thought success was in life. So every time that I thought I would fail, I wasn't failing because I never defined what success was.
It's a good point.
So unless you sit down and say, this is what success really looks like to me, you can't fail. It's impossible.
That's a good point.
So the only way you can ever move forward is by looking at yourself and saying, what do I need to be successful? What's going to put me in the best position to be successful? And what is it? What is success? And I had to reshape all of that because success used to be for me cars, clothes, dating, marriage, house, all materialistic aspects that were driven for me. And every single time I hit that success, it failed me because it wasn't good enough. Understanding that changing your perception of success has to be placed in long-term goals that are almost unobtainable, but yet achieving small steps to get there, like happiness.
Very much.
Happiness is an unattainable goal because it continually has to happen. The pursuit of happiness is success. But the goals you take every single day and the steps you take every single day, that's your success. Not ever reaching anything, but the betterment, the improvement, the seeking of knowledge, the asking for help, the any aspect that you love and want to get better in, that's your success. Everything else fails in comparison when you fully define what success means to you. And I never did that.
That's why people always say it's the journey, not the mountaintop, right? It's
It is.
success and happiness is definitely very fleeting. And you hear all the time from everybody, it's like, once I reach my goal, either they weren't that happy or it's like, okay, now what? Right.
Very much so. Did that
So-
many years. I lived that too, all of it.
So
Yeah.
how did you change your perspective of success and what is your perspective of success?
Sure. How I view success now on a consistent daily basis is every conversation, every interaction, and everybody that I speak to and the actions that I do, am I leaving that situation better than what I left it? That's my success. And I mean that in business. I mean that in friendship. I mean that in my relationship with my girlfriend, with my parents, with everyone. But the only reason I can say that is because I have now rebuilt myself to the point that the comfort level that I have with who I am and the way that I operate allows me the space to be able to say, I'm going to put this situation and what's best for the situation first. But I'm capable of saying no if I understand it's going to be detrimental to me. So my version of success is truly that simple. Leave a situation better than you found it. Definitely not worse.
This is hitting home with me because, like I said, in my early 30s, a lot of my early 30s was like, why don't I have this? When I'm comparing my life to other people, kept trying to achieve what they had. And
it was their success, not yours.
Right. And I don't know when the mindset switch happened. I really don't know, but I did so much work on myself that it became like if I went out on a date with somebody and it didn't work out, or if I asked somebody to go out and it just fizzled apart, or for whatever reason, it was like, all right, that's fine. I got enough going on for me right now that that's your loss. I'll
Yeah.
find someone who
Yeah.
respects this because I got too much going on to be dragged down by somebody else. And
Yeah.
when I had that mindset switch, oh my God, my life was a complete 180. I
It's
wasn't frustrated when I got home from a negative date. It was like, well, fuck
yeah.
it. Now I got time to go do my own thing. So it was
Yes, you
like,
do.
whatever.
And just that simple shift creates
Yeah.
such a freedom in life. It just makes life so much lighter in everything that you do.
Yep.
And you're not saying no, you're not judging, you're not being, an asshole. You're just accepting it for what it is and going, okay, you said no. It's time for me to move forward the best way that I can. And here's how I'm going to do it.
You work for me. That's what I kept saying. I was like, you're clearly not for me. All right, I'll find
And
something.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Not everybody's for everybody.
That's true.
But accepting it for what it is just allows life to be so much lighter for you to move on. I wish we could give it to everybody. I do.
Oh my God. So it's funny you say that because I have a list of many things that I want to tell my son one day, and I might record it on a podcast before he's born or when he's born.
That's awesome.
One of the very, very high things I want, and I actually recorded, like, when I found out I was having a son, I recorded an episode and I was like talking about failure. And I want him to know that there is no such thing as failure. I want him to know to stop comparing yourself to other people. Don't compare yourself to others to find your happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, the mindset of like, you're not for everybody, you're not going to make everybody happy, and that's okay. You don't need to make everybody like you. There's just all these it's just, part of me wonders, it's like, I feel like I want to tell him this over and over and over again, but at the same time it's also like, what shit does he have to go through on his own to figure this out too? So
that's huge, because you wouldn't have learned any of the lessons that you want to teach to him if you didn't go through the shit.
Yeah.
So there's value to all of those processes and things that are going to happen, and the terrible nature, the no's, the highs, the lows, all of it. He's going to be able to build his character, but knowing that you have the foundation to fall back on for him has got to be one of the most incredibly powerful things for you to believe in as a dad. Knowing that you're not the same person that you were before, and how healthy your mindset is now with how you operate in life, that no matter what is thrown your son's way, you have the ability to help him. That's a gift that most people don't have and can't give. So the fact that you have the ability to do that for your son is a stunning accomplishment for what you've been able to accomplish in life.
I appreciate that. And it's actually like, I'm really happy with my perspective on life right now. For the most part, I'm always a work in progress. But if I had followed the textbook of life, if I had got married and all that stuff, like, I wouldn't know any of this. And my relationship would probably be not as great or ended.
Correct.
If I had a child with that person, all that would be put on the kid, and like all that stuff would be seeping through the cracks into my kid. You know what I mean? So
all of it.
Wow.
It's generational trauma that we all pass down.
God,
and right now, you've been able to lessen the amount of generational trauma that you're going to give off to your son.
Yeah.
And that is what we all hope, a goal that we can do for those behind us.
And not only that, I mean, there's going to be stuff that happens with my wife and I, right? It's just going to happen. But we are both aware. We are both communicating loud and clear. There are things that she doesn't want to pass down. There are things I don't want to pass down. We are both having these open communications of like, this needs to stop. Like, anxiety about this, or fear about this, or acting this way, or showing outward frustration, or whatever these situations is going to need to come to a halt. So it's at least, I mean, it's going to happen because it's who we are, but it's at least out in the open. We're going to be aware and hold each other accountable of like, hey, we have to watch it. And this is going to end with us. We're not going to let this trickle down to our child. So,
yeah. And I mean, bravo to you guys, because there's still so many people out there that are involving themselves in relationships that are not only damaging them, but damaging the ones around them. And I wish more people could be able to have a perspective that is healthier for them and everyone around them. But
it takes a lot of self-work. It takes a lot of stuff. You got to be willing to put the work in, which
we do.
You did. And kind of just to get back on track here, but it's like, you did. When did you really start seeing the light switch, I guess, come back on? Like, how long was it? Was there specific steps that really got you going, or things that you became passionate about? And I know something we have in our outline over here is, when did you start becoming comfortable in your own skin again?
Yeah. That whole process probably took, I would say, close to 5 years.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that's good to know. Honestly, that's good to know, because if there's
Yeah.
people listening to this that are like depressed for a
Yeah.
year or two, keep pushing through. It's
Keep
going to
pushing
turn
through, because
around.
most people want immediate results now, especially with social media and the demand of our attention and the goal oriented everything we do. It took probably close to 5 years.
Wow.
And I did not, I knew that I needed to separate from relationships, from people either bringing in great or positive things to me, and I needed to separate the amount of negative aspects that came to me. Now, those steps were very slow, but it took about 5 years. And one of the light bulb moments for me was how I accepted everyone that I became in contact with for who they were. And I know that sounds cliche, and everyone says that. But if you start to act on it, I did roughly about 5 years ago, where every interaction that I started to have with people, I didn't walk in and say, hey, I don't really like the way you speak. That's not for me. I'm out. No, thanks. And I would walk away with, nah, they didn't fit me. Instead, I started to say, let me have an open mind about who I'm going to speak with. Let me have an open mind about who I'm going to be around. Let me have an open mind about the situation I'm going to put myself in, and accept them as they were. I tried to remove as much judgment as I could in the beginning. It is extremely difficult for that voice inside your head not to judge what's happening. But you have to walk away and go, okay, parts of that were good for me. Parts of that I do not agree with. And that's okay.
I could be wrong, but it also sounds like you started to do a better job of living in the moment, rather than putting such pressure and high expectations on the interactions with people. I mean, I guess you can kind of say, I'm specifically talking about dating or whatever, about like, oh my God, I'm going on this date. This could be forever. It's just stuff like, I'm just going to live in the moment. I'm going to have a good conversation with somebody, see where it goes. And if there's a second one, awesome. Right.
And again, you're absolutely taking it in, because the next step of that process was learning to understand that it's right now is the only possibility that you have to live. I've read a bunch of different people. Eckhart Tolle is amazing at trying to, being able to explain that, but truly being able to live in the moment is it. And the third final step of that process, which really brought it all together for me, was I wholeheartedly, and I do not say this tongue in cheek, I truly live that every conversation I have, every day that I have, every moment that I have, I recognize it could be the last moment I ever have. I recognize this might be the last podcast that I ever do. I recognize this might be the last time I ever speak to you. And it's not. But that's not in a morbid sense. That's in a reflection sense, to be able to understand you don't know what the future is. So to worry about anything that is in the future only puts anxiety. You're not really born with anxiety. Anxiety is a subset of unfocused attention. Being able to recognize where you need to direct what you think about can remove a lot of stress and anxiety in your life. And if your focus is not on the present and you're focusing on the future or what happened in the past, you're going to drum up some level of stress and fear and anxiety in your life. Because at this moment, when you're listening to this podcast and you and I are speaking, you and I aren't stressed. And if anyone is listening right now, you're not stressed because you're paying attention and focused on what we are speaking about on this podcast. Your stress and fear and anxiety aren't present because you're focused in the now.
It's something. I love my wife. If she's listening, I love my wife. That's something I would say, we all get anxious to one degree or another. I would say she definitely gets more anxious about things than I do. And that's one of those things we talked about. And it's just all comes from telling yourself a narrative that hasn't happened. And it might not ever happen. And then you you got anxious, you wasted all that energy for nothing.
For nothing.
Or the stories that we tell ourselves of, for an example, this asshole cut me off, what a douche, and then you ruined your day, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And for all you know, he's rushing his kid to the hospital. Then it
Sure.
change your
Yes.
perspective and the message and the story that you tell yourself.
100%. Because if you don't, that's where just saying it out loud was one of the first key things that I learned. Saying that stuff out loud to anyone. It doesn't matter if it needs to be somebody to have a conversation with, whether it's, a spouse or a loved one or a random person. Start talking out loud to be able to gain a better perspective on what you believe to be the truth of the silent narrative that is shaped inside your head. Because that creates the stress and fear for you.
What I'm thinking is, I thought this about myself in a really good, nice, good, confident way. I thought this about myself. Your girlfriend is probably thankful you went through all that shit because she's getting the best version of you that she could ever get, right?
She 100%. She, in the beginning, we had talked about, because I'm very open about my journey, and anyone who asks, I'm more than happy to talk about it. Because if you're not vulnerable with people, they don't know where you're coming from. And if you're coming from a place of standing on the front lines of fighting that battle, you have a little bit more perspective. So I always am openly talk about it. And I consistently say, I am still grateful for that part of my life. In the moments, no, I wasn't, but I didn't have the right perspective to look on it.
Right.
And being able to look back and say, I'm thankful for all of it, gives me the perspective to say, I'm thankful for everything that happens on a daily basis, whether it's good or bad. The only way it can be good or bad is if I create a bad association with it. And honestly, if you think about it, the only bad association you can have is from a referencing point in your past of an unhealthy story. So if you can create a positive aspect of a story wrapped around it of, oof, yeah, broke my leg today, but okay, well, I got a lot of time to write. All right. I got a lot of time to be able to finish off my book. Or I got a lot of time to be able to listen to a bunch of podcasts that are going to help me become a better marketer or become better at something that you love, an aspect. Shifting just the way you see something detrimental changes everything.
You can't change what happens, but you can adjust to it. All you can control is how you react. And I know that's easier said than done, especially like dire situations where things happen and sometimes you have to go through the process, but it is mindset and it's perspective, and it does tend to lead you down a road to find happiness a hell of a lot faster than the opposite.
Because the more you seek the shiny objects, the further away from happiness you're really going to find yourself.
It's also like, what's the word I'm thinking of? Contagious. When you're around people that are like, oh, that was annoying, but yeah, we'll make the best of it. This will be a good time. Whatever. Yeah. Oh, it's raining today. Hey, don't worry about it. Just bring an umbrella. When you're around those people, it's like, it changes your mood. You want to be around them more. Be that.
Changes everything, brother. Changes absolutely everything. And that's part of getting comfortable in your own skin. Knowing that when you show up, you have it. You have the ability to do it. When you show up, not that anyone else isn't going to affect your mood. It's just the volume level on how much they affect you and what you bring to every situation. You can turn it up to 10 and still be you, but you can turn it down to 5 and still be you. And that effect is still going to ripple effect through everyone that you touch, because it's going to be impossible for someone to say, you know what, let's make a really bad day for Ryan. You're going to have the perspective to say, all right, well, that sucked. All right, what can I learn from it? Ah, sweet. You know what? I learned this from it. Thanks. I appreciate that. It's contagious to everybody.
And it's also contagious when you do have a shitty day, but you showed up. And you can show up again the next day and then the next day. And that's where consistency comes from. And that's when you start to build on something.
Yeah, very much so. And those steps are extremely important to have consistently. Repetition and focus are huge in building the steps that are healthy for you.
I'm curious, is there a book or a podcast, but maybe more so a book that sticks with you that really helped you get out of this gutter?
Yeah, I have a bunch of them. Probably I would say, if I had to pick one out of everything, Jay Shetty's Think Like a Monk was incredibly instrumental in hearing a perspective from someone that has gone through that level of focus and attention that it takes to be a monk is just very helpful in reshaping how you focus on what you do in life. And that was incredibly helpful for me.
That's great.
The other one that if I had to pick 1A, it would be Courage to be Disliked.
Who wrote that?
That is Ichiro. I can't say his last name. It's Japanese.
Okay.
And it is a conversation between a individual who comes in to speak to a therapist and how they shape getting comfortable with yourself, understanding that if someone dislikes you, that's okay as long as you're true to yourself. Mm. So it's an incredibly useful book to reshape the way someone views you. Mm. And that's okay if people don't understand you. You just have to be able to be comfortable with how you operate. So the dislike is actually a benefit to you because they're not bringing in the parts of energy that are going to shift you away from your core values of who you think you are. So the dislike is actually a positive. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's a different world when you start to have that mindset shift and just see the world from a different perspective. I know we're talking about books. You, sir, are an author.
My book is, hopefully we're gonna be by 6-8 months from now. So not available quite yet, but we're getting there. For sure.
Talk about it just a little bit. What can the people expect?
People can expect a very honest and open conversation from me and my side and how I got to where I am now. And a lot of the conversation that we had in this podcast is going to resonate inside that book. And it will be the experiences that I had in life and some of the steps that I took to how I got to evaluate every thought and every decision that I made. And there'll be actionable steps to take to be able to help you gain perspective on what it takes to get from A to B, B to C, C to D, and so on. So it's based off of the 3 aspects that I control what you can control, and understanding that your emotions will dictate actions and reactions. So if you never take the time to effectively evaluate what emotion you're feeling, you'll be left explaining away your actions and reactions. And being able to say it out loud and just change the narrative inside your head, and breathing. So understanding why your breath is one of the most important things you can do in life, and how meditation can help you if you're willing to go to that step, and really what meditation means and how to show up for yourself and others. All those aspects will be included inside all 10 chapters.
That's amazing. That's so awesome. When did you decide to become a life coach?
Probably 3.5 years ago.
Yeah.
3.5 years ago, I began starting that journey. And it was a struggle for me, honestly, because I had a little bit of imposter syndrome for sure.
We all do.
That you started going, yeah, but who's going to really listen to me? I mean, I went through it, but who's really going to want to listen to my story? I mean, I'm not anything special. And I, went through a lot of it. And I wish I could give credit to the individual. But this one is not me. And I wish I could give credit to quote them. But they said it's not you. It's sharing your information to help someone. So removing the self-centered egoness self of me and putting it into, I have information that other people can use to hopefully be helpful in their life, made that shift a little bit easier for me to move out of imposter syndrome to, it's not about my ego. It's not about me. It's about the information that can hopefully help someone better their lives. And that took a little bit, but it's much more comfortable being able to understand it's not about me. It's about information and helping.
And that's why we're having this conversation right here, right now.
That's why I love your podcast, brother, because none of it is about you. It is about helping whoever chooses to listen. And hopefully it rings a bell with somebody to make their life even just the tiniest bit better.
That's awesome. Yeah, when I talk to you or people like you, it's just like how my life just becomes better just because of conversations with people with stories and encouragement and advice. And it's just what an amazing road. And it's awesome that you're on this road as well. And I think you're going to help so many people. I'm glad you're able to overcome that imposter syndrome. I get it. We all have it. When I started the podcast, it was like, what the fuck is going to listen to my episodes? It's what sucks is like it's a goddamn everyone has a goddamn podcast nowadays, which is annoying because you tell people I have this podcast, like, oh, so does everybody. So I wish this was like 5 or 6 years ago, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not.
It's been a blessing by all means. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. I'm excited for you and your book. Are you going to do an audio book? Tell me you're going to do an audio book.
Yes, 100% going to do an audio book. Looking to see how I can get into doing a TEDx. So gonna go that route as well. So hopefully in the next 6-8 months, it'll be said and done, published, good to go.
That's awesome. Greg, did I miss anything? Did I miss anything from your journey?
No, bro. I think we pretty much covered a whole lot of the aspects that I think a lot of people struggle with, and hopefully they find some sort of nuggets of knowledge and can help them. And this is exactly what I was hoping for: an open, raw, honest, vulnerable conversation that you and I both can improve on.
That's why I'm here. I want honest, I want raw, I want real. Because I think when you're not, people can tell. And people need something to grasp onto and hold on to and give people hope, especially this time of year with the holidays. I know people are like having a really tough time. People are already depressed. It just like amplifies it. It makes it worse. People are with their loved ones. God knows, like when I was single, it was like everyone's got someone for Christmas, and I'm, going home with the mom and dads. That's all I do. It's tough. I get it. I don't knock it because I've been there before.
I know it's a difficult spot to be in for sure. And if you're alone, you're in bad company.
Your honesty and your vulnerability is awesome.
Yeah,
that's what's going to help. That is what's going to help people, not you telling a fake story or whatever is your real and rawness. So Greg, thank you so much. And when your book comes out, come back on
for sure.
We'll have another conversation.
100%. We'll talk about all avenues of being able to get that and the whole process that takes as well.
Perfect. Well, Greg, thank you so much for joining me, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Absolutely right. I appreciate everything, my friend. Honestly, and as raw as I can say, don't stop what you're doing. Please, for everyone else out there listening, for everyone else who listens to your podcast and appreciates you and supports what you're doing, don't stop, because it's not about you. It's about everybody else. And that's one of the things that the Pursuit of Happiness podcast is why it's one of my favorites.
Dude, that means a lot.
We all appreciate you. So thank you from everybody. But thanks for having the conversation, man. I much appreciated it.
Dude, that's the best way to end it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.